Hey, what is going on guys? Danny here, hope you're all doing well. In this video, we'll be discussing why Intel's recently released 10th generation Comet Lake-s processors for the desktop are probably not worth your money. So on the morning of May 20th, 2020, I saw my feed get spammed with all the 10th gen reviews, and the performance of these new processors was quite underwhelming, and that came as no surprise. Essentially, what we're seeing here is Coffee Lake-s, with just the addition of more cores and hyper-threading enabled throughout the entire lineup. This is Intel's response to AMD's Ryzen 3000 processors based on Zen 2, and it really shows how they're hanging on by a thread. But let's take a closer look and see what we're getting here with the whole lineup. At the top of the stack, you've got Intel's i9-10900 and all the variants which differ in clock speeds, TDP, and whether it's unlocked. Yes, Intel is still charging a premium for a special unlocked variant, and along with that, you'll still need an expensive Z-series motherboard, but we'll talk more about that later on. The 10900s have 10 cores and 20 threads with hyper-threading, so 2 more than last year's flagship. Then you've got the i7-10700s which have 8 cores and 16 threads, making them equivalent to the i9-9900K from the previous generation. With the i5s having 6 cores and 12 threads to finally match the R5, which has had hyper-threading since its release back in 2017, and these i5s will be equivalent to the i7-8700K from the 8th generation Coffee Lake series. Then you've got the i3s, which have 4 cores and 8 threads, making them equivalent to 2017's flagship i7, the 7700K, but AMD already stole the thunder there with the newest addition to the 3000 family, the R3-3300X. Apart from the i9-10900K, there really isn't anything new in this lineup for which we haven't seen before, adding on to the whole aspect of being such an underwhelming launch. Speaking of stuff we haven't seen before, the benchmarks which were posted from all the previous reviews showed you exactly what you'd expect from the lineup of processors that's just been getting rehashed for the last 5 years now. If you're curious to know how the 10700K performed, well, it performs exactly like an i9-9900K, just a tad bit faster, thanks to slightly higher clock speeds. And if you wanted to know how an i5-10600K performed, you just look at some recent i7-8700K benchmarks. I'm sure nobody was expecting anything earth-shattering there. When it came to the new i9-10900K, performance here was also pretty easy to gauge. Gaming performance was on par with the 9900K, and productivity performance was between a Ryzen 7 3800X and a Ryzen 9 3900X. So that's why I won't really be focusing on their performance too much, as I'm sure you're all informed by now how they actually perform. Now, I just wanted to put this out there that I'm not saying that the performance of these chips is bad or anything, or that they can't perform good or their capabilities are limited, because I do acknowledge that they can bring exceptional gaming performance to the table, and for the most part can perform well in productivity, for the most part thanks to Intel finally getting on board with bringing higher core count CPUs with hyper-threading to the mainstream. My whole issue with Intel and the new CPUs is with the horrible value that these chips offer and the bad ecosystem they're in when their competitor offers a much better platform that's a lot more flexible. Let's compare prices and see what we're actually dealing with here. The Core i9-10900K currently retails for around $530, assuming you can even find one in stock, that is. Along with that, you'll still need a Z490 motherboard to take full advantage of all of its features like overclocking. The Asus ROG Strix Z490-E looks like a decent choice. It's got decent VRMs, dual M.2s, etc., and is going for $300. There's no doubt that these new generation of Z490 motherboards are coming in at quite a premium over their predecessors, just like how the X470 boards were significantly more expensive than X470. However, with X570, at least you got PCIe 4.0. There was a justification for the new price increase. With Z490, Intel still doesn't support PCI Express 4.0, so those Gen 4 NVMEs that are coming on the market can't be utilized on this platform, or at least not to their fullest capabilities. There are cheaper Z490 boards, but you throw that CPU into a bottom-of-the-barrel board and you're seriously doing that 10900K a disservice, because it'll throttle hard, as this chip does run hot and is very power hungry, as Intel have pretty much pushed this 14nm node to its limits. This CPU also doesn't come with a cooler, and with high thermals you'll need a beefy cooler. Now when it comes to coolers, I often find that this is a market where you can easily end up overspending more than you really have to. Asus and NZXT offer coolers like the ROG Strix L360 and the Kraken X73 respectively, which cost close to around $200 after taxes and shipping. That's a heck of a lot of money for just a CPU cooler, but you can go for something like the Deepcool Captain 360X for like half the price and get the same kind of performance. So I decided to go for this cooler at just $90. Just totaling those three components and you're looking at a whopping $920, which is absolutely crazy because we haven't even built the whole system yet, especially considering this is still a mainstream platform as well, although both AMD and Intel have kind of blurred the lines there between HEDT and mainstream. I won't specifically say that one or the other is responsible for that. Now, on the other hand, if you were to look at a comparative Ryzen build, you would end up saving quite a lot of money, get much better multi-threading performance while not sacrificing a whole lot in gaming. Remember, for most users who aren't in the pro gamer category, you won't be able to tell the differences between the two CPUs. The Ryzen 9 3900X has been officially lowered down to $410, and currently at Micro Center you can find this chip going for $390, which is an absolute steal. Furthermore, while I can choose a high-end X570 board, I don't necessarily have to if I'm not going to be utilizing those high-end features like PCIe 4.0. So you can end up going with a cheaper B450 motherboard, and the 3900X will run just fine as it's a lot more efficient than the 10900K despite having 2 more cores. However, you can actually go with an upcoming B550 motherboard and you'll be able to utilize PCIe 4.0 without having to pay a premium. You can just see how there's a lot more options when it comes to the Ryzen platform at many price points, and you're not necessarily locked into one chipset if you want to overclock because you can overclock on all of these boards. As of now though, since B550 motherboards haven't hit the market yet, I went with the Asus ROG Strix B450F motherboard for $130 from Micro Center. As for the cooler, you can go with an aftermarket cooler for the 3900X. It's actually what I recommend, especially if you're going to be using a thermally constrained case. But the 3900X still comes with a stock cooler in the box at no extra cost that can get you by, especially if you're not going to be overclocking and disable things like PBO. But just to be a bit more fair here, we'll stick with the same cooler that we went with on the Intel build. When comparing the subtotals for both of these configurations, there is a massive difference already. With the cooler, the Ryzen system will cost $310 cheaper, or $400 if you decided to just stick with that stock cooler. That's a lot of money saved for essentially better multi-threading performance and 10 to 15% less gaming performance at 1080p with medium settings with a high-end GPU. Hands down, every day of the week, I'd pick the Ryzen system since that $300 to $400 saved can be spent elsewhere on more memory, a faster GPU, a higher capacity NVMe SSD, or some more games. This is why it just doesn't make sense to buy a 10900K unless, like I said, money really isn't an issue for you at all. Now, Intel also have the 10700K, which is just a cheaper 9900K, and while at first this may seem like a better deal, it falls under the same kind of caveats that negatively affect the 10900K and ends up in an even worse position. I'll elaborate more on that in just a moment. You can just go for a 3800X or 3700X if you want the same or slightly better multi-threading performance and want to save some money. Or if you're looking to spend the same amount of money, then you've got the 3900X, which is still slightly cheaper. The reason why I say that is because the 10600K is the best bang for the buck CPU for gaming in this lineup. As Gamers Nexus recently showed, if you want that top tier Intel gaming performance but don't want to fork over a lot of money, then you can get a 10600K, just overclock it, overclock the ring bus, give it some fast DDR4 memory, 3600MHz or 3800MHz, and you're all set. You can even drop down to a cheaper Z490 board, since this part only has 6 cores and it shouldn't be extremely power hungry. Although overclocking does kind of throw all of that out the window, but at least it's not as extreme as that 10 core part, yet gaming performance is still right there. I know there might be some users concerned about getting 6 core parts as opposed to 8 core parts or 10 core parts in terms of longevity, but I think it will be quite some time before we see 12 threads fully saturated and start to bottleneck GPUs. Going back to what I said before, the 10900K still holds its place if you're not worried about a budget and want the top of the line Intel CPU, as there's still performance to be had at the high end. Plus, you get that multi-threading performance too. The 10600K is great for those that still want that top tier gaming performance, that want to save some money but don't necessarily want to switch to Ryzen as to lose that gaming performance. That's why the 10700K is in such a useless spot, or rather it doesn't fit into any spot, because you can compare it to the i5 for gaming, then you might as well get the i5 because there's hardly any benefit. You compare it to the Ryzens for multi-threading and it loses there as well, both in terms of value and performance. It's a lose-lose situation. Don't buy this part. The i3s in the 10th gen lineup are all DOA, as they're easily beaten by the R3 3300X, both in regards to performance per dollar and being able to use a more future-proof and flexible platform. As with the i3s, you can't even use more than 2666 MHz RAM thanks to the limitations of the H or B series motherboards, so they're limited there, and it just doesn't make sense to pair them with a $300 Z board. As far as I see it, there's really only one reason why anyone would want to consider buying these Intel chips, and I've mentioned this in previous videos, and that is if you're a professional esports player who plays at 1080p low settings with a 2080 Ti on a 240Hz monitor because you need every frame you can get, along with money not being an issue. This is a very niche category, and most users dropping $1,000 on a graphics card and paying $400 or $500 for a CPU aren't gaming like that, and would rather have their sights set on 1440p or 4K, where the CPU hardly even matters then. If you are going to be using your computer for everything else, and that includes gaming, productivity, content creation, along with getting the best bang for your buck, Ryzen is the clear choice here. You can still game just fine on these CPUs. You know, it's always funny when fanboys mention Intel's gaming crown, because honestly, it makes it seem like Ryzen CPUs can't game. I've been playing on a 144Hz monitor with a Ryzen system since 2017, and I've honestly never felt like I wasn't getting a satisfactory gaming experience. With my upgrade to the 3900X, it's been a best of both worlds experience. You want the best all-around CPU that can do everything, the jack of all trades, for an amazing price to performance ratio, go with the Ryzen 5 3600. Although I do recommend upgrading that cooler, but still, this CPU offers impeccable gaming performance, and multi-threading performance is also good, if not better than a 10600K, which means it'll be capable of video editing, streaming. You can buy the CPU and not have to worry about upgrading it for a while. If you do need better multi-threading performance, I recommend the Ryzen 7 3700X or 3900X. We've also got rumors of the upcoming Matisse refresh, but I find those CPUs to be somewhat redundant at this point. However, later on, we've got AMD's upcoming Vermeer CPUs, Ryzen 4000, which are looking to be a huge generational leap over Zen 2, and that's really saying something considering how good Zen 2 already is. With rumors such as 15% higher IPC, higher clock speeds, 8-core CCXs with unified L3 cache that should help lower latency, along with higher Infinity Fabric clocks at a 1-to-1 ratio, then you're potentially looking at AMD not just curb stomping Intel, but when it comes to multi-threading performance, but also taking away Intel's one and only selling point, the gaming crown. It's going to be a bloodbath. I'll discuss some more of that in a future video once I get some more information. If I was a PC hardware enthusiast and I was looking into building a great system right now, and I wasn't in dire need of a top tier performance immediately, then I would wait until B550 motherboards hit the market, grab a board that has solid features, good VRMs, and drop in a 3300X, and wait it out until Ryzen 4000 CPUs based on Zen 3 hit the market. Drop in a 4700X or 4900X, which hopefully should be Q3 or Q4 of this year, which isn't too far away now. I mean, we're already halfway through the year, and I'm sure many of you are hoping this one goes by fast with everything that's going on. But it looks like I'm starting to get off topic, so I'll take this opportunity to end this video. If you guys found this video to be informative and entertaining, then hit that like button. Let me know your thoughts down below, check out the video description for ways to support the channel, and if you're interested in more content like this, then make sure you're subscribed. Thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you guys in the next one.